Welcome to Ladies Talking Leafs. I'm Chris.
And I'm Sil.
And like we mentioned last show, if there was any big news coming out of Leafland, we would be having a bonus episode. And here we are having a bonus episode with the news that Kyle Dubas is not going to be returning as general manager of the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Yeah, so we're going to be chatting with our Ladies Talking Leafs insider, Mike Augello, about this. But there were also some big changes within the Toronto Marlies that kind of went under the radar a little bit. So the Marlies finished first in the North Division and were sixth overall in the American Hockey League in the regular season, but got swept 3-0 in their second round playoff series versus the Rochester Americans, which I just found out that they are, or I didn't realize that they're the Buffalo Sabres minor hockey affiliate. So
Yeah. So on Friday, the Marlies announced that head coach Greg Moore and his assistant coaches, AJ McLean and John Snowden, were let go as part of this big upheaval at MLSE because with the removal of Kyle Dubas, obviously, as GM. So there will definitely be some work to do at the AHL level as well, and to find a new coaching staff. And there's even possibly, the GM is still there, but you never know, that might change as well.
So it's been quite a while since we've had this much instability in the Leafs organization, and our Ladies Talking Leafs insider, Mike Augello, is joining us to talk about the decision to move on from Kyle Dubas and how this will affect the team's future. So without any further ado, let's talk Leafs.
All right, some big news and kind of surprising news from the Leafs on Friday afternoon that Kyle Dubas will not be returning as the GM of the Toronto Maple Leafs. So to talk about this, we are welcoming back to the show our Ladies Talking Leafs insider, Mike Augello.
All right. Mike covers the Leafs and the NHL as a reporter and does a podcast with HockeyBuzz.com. He is co-host of Off the Post Radio and the Leafs Convo, and he is a writer for Full Press Hockey. One of these days, I'm going to get this right. Anyway, Mike also covers the Buffalo Sabres as a lead writer with Buffalo Hockey Now. As always, thanks for coming on the show, Mike.
Good morning, good afternoon, ladies. And in my spare time, I do feats of magic, and I don't have any spare time. Sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to say, no spare time for you after all that.
No.
Yeah. Keeping busy, especially adding in the Buffalo Sabres too. So,
boy.
Yeah. But okay. Big news, as we all know, on Friday afternoon with Kyle Dubas, yes, but with Brendan Shanahan calling that press conference at 3:00 before the long weekend. And first, we just want to get your thoughts on Shanahan's press conference and the fact he was so open with the timeline. I don't know, and his relationship with Kyle Dubas. We knew, he basically gave Kyle Dubas the chance, right? He was only 27, I think, when he came in 9 years ago. I guess when 27, 28 years old, not really. Well, he's known a little bit in the Sioux. Obviously, he was big in the family there. But I don't know. What did you think of Shanahan? I laid it out just so that I could remember it all here. I wrote down all the steps. He was very detailed. And,
Can I just say one thing first?
Sure.
Is anyone did they actually think that they were going to bury this in the long weekend? I just thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was funny because I know that I think it was Steve Dangle was saying that it would be typical that they would try to bury this. There's an old political expression, you dump bad news at Friday at 5 p.m. because by the time, it was take out the trash day. It was an old West Wing episode. Is that take out the trash, you dump it at 5 o'clock on Friday, and by the time Monday at 9 o'clock comes around, it's old news. This was not going to be old news no matter what happened.
Yeah.
I know he apologized that it was 3 p.m. on a Friday on a long weekend. The funny thing was it got announced. Elliot Friedman broke the story a little before noon, and normally in a situation of that magnitude, I would have immediately hustled and got in the car and driven up the QEW. But being a holiday weekend, I figured there was no way I was going to get there by 3 o'clock. So I just watched like everyone on the computer. And yes, I was a little bit taken aback by the extreme detail of the whole situation. And of course, even though we got extreme detail from Brendan Shanahan, we got one side of the detail, and that's where I think we're never going to get like a full 3D picture of the whole situation. But I think the things that we have heard since the announcement on Friday, I personally think that this was a situation that was brewing going back to last September, and Shanahan referred to that in terms of the board not giving Dubas an extension. And I was literally 10 feet away from Kyle Dubas on Monday when he had his end of year media availability, and he mentioned, the stress that it had on his family and, thing. And he was genuinely, I don't think that was an act. I think he was genuine in that. And I talked to some reporters after that, and they were like, maybe that wasn't the best thing to do, because if you start to show a little bit of, human frailty, this is a position that you don't want to be showing that.
And I think too, like it's kind of like he said he doesn't know for sure, obviously. Well, he did say that he doesn't know for sure he'll be back. Like he gave that question, and it's like, okay, why are you saying that right in front of millions of people? Like,
And the thing is that Shanahan has been, I think, the biggest defender of Kyle Dubas. I think he was on board with him getting an extension going back to last September. I think one or more of the corporate entities, either Bell or Rogers or Larry Tannenbaum, were not on board with giving Dubas the extension. And according to what Shanahan said, after the regular season and after the win over Tampa, they were on board. He was given the go-ahead to say we're on board for an extension. So all of a sudden, when Dubas made his statement on Monday, something that Shanahan thought he shouldn't do, then all of a sudden the doubt started to creep in. And I don't think it was the doubt from Shanahan. Otherwise, they wouldn't have continued the negotiations going forward. I think it was doubt coming from the corporate entity that had reservations going back to last September. So maybe the seeds were planted back then, and this just gave rise to that doubt once again.
Do you think, one thing I was thinking of is that when I think about, Kyle Dubas and just the impression that I got in his presser, that looked to me like a man that was conflicted. So I think he has this vision. We all know how tied to this vision he is, how much he wanted this to be a success. We don't know what's going on the family side with him. Do you think it's possible that the counter offer that they made, because I really do think that the autonomy that he wanted was the big thing, because ultimately his vision is what he wanted to bring to fruition. And I think he really felt that he wanted the autonomy to do that. Do you think that was like him coming back saying, okay, thinking about it over the few days, okay, what exactly do I want to be able to come back, and just shooting his last shot kind of thing?
Well, I think the most disingenuous comment, I'm not going to say lie, but because that's unfair, but the most disingenuous comment of Brendan Shanahan during the media availability was when he talked about the offer, the new parameters or new, and then there was a gap. He made it sound like it was purely financial.
Yeah, and I don't agree with that either.
That's honestly, this organization has thrown good money after bad on scouting and analytics and this and that. And are you going to tell me that they're going to move on from a general manager that they like because of $1 million a year?
Well, especially they just finished paying Babcock's salary just this year, so
yeah, I call BS on that. So, but I do think, and what Elliot Friedman mentioned on Friday or Saturday during one of the broadcasts, that essentially there was a wish on the part of Dubas to streamline the decision-making processes. And James Myrtle in The Athletic talked about how there was friction between Shanahan and Dubas, not personal friction, but the fact that there were certain things that Dubas wanted to do that he was prevented from doing. And there was certain things that he didn't want to do that he had to do because either Shanahan or the board wanted him to do that. So all that thing. So essentially, he's saying, okay, maybe the wear and tear and the tension and everything to do with his family had to do with the fact that he couldn't do the job the way he wanted to do it. And the new parameters were, okay, if I'm coming back, I need this, and that. And
well, the thing is, though, I'm gonna go a little bit on Shanahan's side here, because it was after the trade deadline that he went to Kyle Dubas and said to him that, like, he wants to move forward. He got approval from the board. He wants to move forward with this extension.
And he said, talk to my agent.
Talk to the agent. And he gave him a week. Like, he took a week. Kyle Dubas took a week, according to Brendan Shanahan, to decide whether or not he wants to do it at that time. Kyle Dubas came back to him a week later saying, yes, go talk to my agent. Okay. So for me, I'm thinking to myself, okay, so obviously it was all year that these issues, and again, he had, like, it's the family issues. Like, that's definitely nothing. That's something we don't know, and we hope everything's okay with that. But how do you tell a person to go and get a contract like that, let's say, to start working on it? Shanahan gives it to him on Sunday, the framework, right? That's what Shanahan said. He gives him on Sunday, and then Dubas comes out on Monday and kind of plants that seed of doubt, sort of. I'm just thinking, like,
well, that's why I think
from March till now.
Why did it take so long?
Yeah. Like, how, like, couldn't you have thought of this in, like, mid-April, let's say, right? Like, to say, okay, maybe, tell the agent that, I'm not so sure or whatever, right? I don't know. I just think that's kind of odd. And then with Shanahan and these, you're always going to hear this too, I think, with any team. It doesn't matter that somebody's not allowing you to do the trade, and
that's nothing new.
That's nothing new.
Any GM has these things to go through. But I do agree, though, that with Dubas and the way he thinks, because of course I'm in his head, right? But I think that some of these things that he wants to do, some of these things are timely, and when you have to go through all these hoops to get approval on things, it makes his job a lot more difficult. So I could see how that would be frustrating.
And the thing that we'll never know is, what were the decisions that were made that they couldn't make, and what were the decisions that they couldn't make that they made, or vice. What I'm saying is, like, was the Nick Foligno deal a deal that they want, that the board and Shanahan wanted that Dubas didn't?
I heard that's the opposite on that one. I heard that was his deal, right? But
but that's the thing.
But again, we don't know. We're hearing hearsay here and there.
Yeah, we don't know. Like, I have heard rumors going back a few years that the Leafs were interested in Tage Thompson before Tage Thompson blew up with the Sabres, because there was a relationship between Tage Thompson and Auston Matthews, and he was not doing particularly well in Buffalo. But was that a deal that was prevented? We don't know. We don't, and we'll never know. So we don't know what moves. And now, could you say they didn't want to give Kyle Dubas autonomy because that would give him carte blanche to keep the core four? That would give him carte blanche to keep Sheldon Keefe again. When the board and Shanahan might have said, okay, it's time to make those changes. We don't know. That's the thing. We never will.
Well, that's why I think that for sure, that when I looked at Dubas in that press conference, I felt like there were conditions in that contract that he didn't know if he could live with. Bottom line.
But he waited too long, basically, to
decide that
Shanahan.
he could potentially live with it.
And by coming out in that press conference on Monday and saying, well, maybe I'm not all in on being general manager of the Leafs, that's saying, okay, well, I will be if you give me what I want. That could, that could have been calculated. I think it was right. I don't think that was the case. I think he was for real in terms of him talking about his family and the stress. But I think the cause for the stress might have been sort of the machinations of the management. But that being said, okay, so now, it's Thursday, and he comes back and he says, I still want to be general manager of this team. And apparently behind the scenes, he's having meetings and things of that nature. But he's put this thing out there that he wants this and that. And Shanahan basically thought about it overnight and then went in on Friday at the Ford Performance Center with an axe and chopped his head off. So,
because they had the conversation on the Wednesday, they had a long meeting, apparently like a personal meeting with Dubas and Shanahan. So obviously we won't know what was said in that meeting, right, before Thursday. So I don't there might have been something else that was
that
said
Kyle said that gave him pause.
It was the agent on Thursday,
and then the agent on Thursday,
with new parameters, and that's when Shanahan started to really question. And then it was the email from Kyle saying he still wanted to be general manager of the team. Now there was nothing else other than that, but it went hand in hand with what the agent had contacted them about. So it's like, I want to be general manager of the team, but I need this.
So maybe the communication problem is between Dubas and his agent. Ultimately,
he messed up, I think, personally on his own. Possibly.
I don't know whether you can. I find it hard to believe that somebody who is a former agent, Kyle Dubas, would not be communicating exactly chapter and verse what he wanted his agent to convey. He just didn't want to do it.
He's a pretty detail-oriented guy, that Kyle. So.
And one thing that was interesting that I caught from Shanahan too during the just to do with the decisions and him Dubas maybe being blocked from making decisions or the reverse, that other decision being made that he didn't want to make. But Shanahan said later on in the conference that when it comes to the roster, I guess he said just being different doesn't solve something. So that to me means, I don't think he's all on board to say that he wants to trade one of these core four players too. I think one of them has to go. We talked about that in our last show, but just that comment, I just thought it was interesting. And there was no promises. He's like, there's no promises on a timeline. Like everybody wants something that is a better fit. But it has to be, the better fit has to be an improvement of what's on the ice. That's what he said basically, right? So I mean, it's not like Brendan Shanahan is like, I don't know. It's like everybody thinks it's chaos right now, right? And it is, I guess, but
it's pretty chaotic. And honestly, if you had a Twitter poll right now to say who is the main, who bears the most responsibility for the dismissal of Kyle Dubas, and you had A, Brendan Shanahan, B, the Maple Leafs MLS board, C, Kyle Dubas, or D, the core four, it's
D.
Yes.
It's D. It's D.
And I actually think, if we're looking for a jolt for these guys, basically we took away their blankie. So their comfort is now taken away.
Are you saying that Auston Matthews is Linus? Come on.
No, I'm not saying that. But I'm saying that whatever the person who coddled them is not there anymore. So that is a little bit of discomfort that maybe they need. So whether they like it or not, and that makes them decide they can deal with it and stay, then, that actually is telling, right?
I'll just say this. I don't care about their discomfort.
100%. We shouldn't.
After 5 years of generally not showing up when this team needs them, after paying them a collective $200 million over 5 years between Tavares, Marner, Matthews, and Nylander. And, Nylander showed up every once in a while and Matthews showed up every once in a while, but there was no consistency like you see out of Matthew Tkachuk or Nathan McKinnon or Sidney Crosby or whoever, back in the day. Yeah. No consistency, no of effort. And I'm sorry. I don't care what changes they make. General manager, head coach, the core four cannot come back. It absolutely cannot. You cannot come back after all this. You cannot come back with that group again. I am sorry.
Okay.
That's good. And leads into our, let's say, next question. So it's about
the firing of Kyle Dubas. How do you think this will affect the player signings and free agency going forward? I mean, free agency, that might be a little bit of a tougher thing to guess because it really depends on who's in the seat after. But
well, okay. First of all, Brendan Shanahan said that he wasn't going to rush into this, but really, I mean, he has to. You have to get a general manager. You cannot go into July 1st and the draft. I mean, the draft less so because they've already done their scouting and things, and they don't have that many draft picks anyway. But you cannot go into July 1st with an uncertainty with Brandon Pridham basically as an interim general manager. And that's essentially what Shanahan said, that Pridham in the interim will be handling things. But these are all Dubas people. And we don't know if their contracts end the same time that Dubas's did, which is June the 30th. So you could have a completely empty organization on July 1st with Pridham gone, with Wes Clark gone, with Ryan Hardy gone, with Haley Wickenheiser gone. You could have an empty ship, an empty vessel at the Ford Performance Center or at the offices of Scotiabank Arena. And that's a scary proposition. So I would think that within a week to 2 weeks, they have to find a general manager. Now, I don't know whether that's going to be somebody who is in a general manager's position right now. The rumors are, Doug Armstrong from St. Louis has been mentioned, or if it's somebody who just got let go like Brad Treliving, or somebody who had been out there like Ray Shiro or Mark Hunter. That name, well, that was mentioned by Jeff Merrick a couple days ago. And like, if you're talking about familiarity, well, he was an assistant general manager in the organization, and he knows Marner and he knows Matthews. And, I personally, I think that would be an unmitigated disaster. And his draft record was not good. Give me the NHL Central scouting book on the floor of the draft, and I could do as good a job. I could draft Auston Matthews first overall. I could look in the book and pick guys better than Emily Rassinen or Igor Korshkov or some of these other guys. I'm not,
But when it comes to the players, though, themselves, like everybody's talking about this whole relationship that that the GM has with and again, like we said before, when you had that little poll question, it's the core four that basically got him canned in the end, because they didn't show up when they needed to. Right. But that relationship, let's say for Auston Matthews, obviously, because that's the biggest one, and that now all of a sudden he's not going to sign because Kyle Dubas isn't there. I don't know. I think that's that relationship, he needs to have a plan, obviously, to know a plan to say, but ultimately, obviously, with all this happening, Brendan Shanahan, MLSE wants to win. Obviously, it's not like we're going to tank and be playing out of Mullet Arena or something in Arizona, in his hometown. But what is that relationship of with Matthews and, Nylander, I guess, is the other one that has the contract coming up and the no trade clauses and all that kind of thing. Is it do you think Matthews is just going to say, forget it? I'm not going to sign right away, or because of this?
The thing is, we know that Dubas had cultivated a good professional relationship with Orr Wasserman and with Judd Moldaver, Matthews's agent. And obviously Matthews's comments on Monday were I want to, basically, I want to be here long term. I'd like to get it done before July the 1st.
Yeah. That
was under the auspices of Kyle Dubas and the plan that they were operating under. Now that has all been thrown into the garbage heap because we don't know what the plan is. Now, the skepticism that Elliot Friedman reported, he basically said, well, I think the way he phrased it, and I apologize if I'm not, word by word, but I think he said that he would find it hard to believe that Matthews would sign before July 1st. First of all, he can't sign before July 1st because he only becomes eligible for the extension after July 1st. But they could agree to a structure of a deal, and then on July 1st announce it. The thing is that on July 1st, I think at 12 noon, a no move clause drops in. And this is John Tavares in reverse, because that's what happened with the Islanders. He had a no move clause and he says, I'm not going anywhere. And then he went somewhere in free agency. Okay. And that's the thing. It's the Leafs want to get Matthews taken care of, but I think Matthews is going to want to know what the direction of the franchise is. And now, does that mean I don't want my buddies traded? I don't want Willie traded or Mitch traded. Yeah. Well, you can't dictate what the roster is going to be. Auston, we love you.
Yeah.
We love you. We'll make you the highest paid player in the league. We'll give you a 5-year deal instead of an 8-year deal if that's what you want. But you can't dictate to us what the team is going to be, because the team has not done anything other than win one round against a tired Tampa Bay team in the 5 years that you made the playoffs.
I just think it would be funny that, if somebody would make those kinds of demands, but then be willing to go someplace else where none of their friends are. So
yeah,
it doesn't make any sense, really.
Yeah.
But they're on a clock, and that's the thing. You've got 5 weeks, a little over 5 weeks until July 1st. And I'm sure negotiations, or I'm sure contact has been established between what's left of Leafs management and Auston Matthews representation to say, to sort of gauge, okay, well, we're going to go this way. This is why getting a new general manager in there as quickly as possible is imperative, because that general manager then would be establishing the connection between himself and the agent and starting the negotiating process. So, 2 of the 4 are easy. You want to get Matthews signed, and John Tavares is going nowhere. I don't care what pipe dream people are thinking of about him waiving his no move clause.
No,
it's not happening. Stop it.
Do you think that they're going to, I don't know, I've heard this other, I guess, rumors out there to say they'll make his life miserable, like strip the captaincy. Like that would be going back to like Daryl Sittler days, like to make it so miserable for him and that he'll want to leave. But I can't see that happening either.
All I can say is this: if the Leafs organization does what some of their fans want them to do with John Tavares to force him out, you will never get another big-time free agent to sign in Toronto again. Your name will be mud. It's dumb. He's still a good player. So shut up. That's just dumb.
Yeah. No, I agree too. It's not happening anyways. And, and the number one priority is signing, obviously, Auston Matthews.
What do you think, though, about like if they can't sign him before July 1st, what are the chances that they try to trade him?
I think they're very slim, because they, do you want to, basically after July 1st, you're essentially going to be working on his agent saying, we're going to make you the highest paid player in the league. Like the thing is like he has to sign on to not only the contract, sign on to the plan that is in front of them. And, he's got power here, and that's the thing. It's like, but what does he do to use that power? Does he do it to keep players? Does he do it to get a shorter term deal so he can have another payday? I don't know.
What if he pulls a Kachuk and says, I'm not going to sign here?
Well, he has to do that before July 1st.
Yeah.
Because Kachuk did that. I don't think he had a no move clause, but he says, sorry, Brad Treliving, I'm not signing here. So, trade me, or otherwise you keep me. And on July 1st of 2023, I'm walking away. Yeah. And he said, okay, well, I'll trade you. And he got a really good return. Now he'd get a great return. Obviously, Auston Matthews will get a phenomenal return, but all of a sudden now you have a 33-year-old center who's going to move to the wing, and you have a 26-year-old center who is one of the best 3-4 centers in the league who wants out. You're back in Tyler Bozak territory with your number one center.
Yeah. No, I can't see it. I know in the presser too that Brendan Shanahan said like he made calls to players already, and he has to make. I'm sure Auston Matthews was most likely his first call, and then also just the fact that Larry Tannenbaum too apparently is really tight with the family too of Auston Matthews' family. I heard like he keeps in contact, whatever. I think Auston Matthews knows what's going on already, probably like, and at least a little bit anyways. It's so hopefully that's enough to keep him comfortable until they actually hire a GM, and then he can find out the full details as to what this plan is. But all right. The last question we have for you, I think, is just with the, I guess you mentioned a few of the candidates, I guess, for possible candidates for GM of the Leafs. who do you think would be the right choice for because I mean, yesterday I was scared. I saw somebody on Twitter posted a picture of Jim Benning. I was like, oh my God. I was like, no, he was at the airport in Toronto.
Yeah, what's Floyd Smith doing? Yeah, no. I mean, it's a really difficult question because the GMs that you'd want are the GMs that are already in positions. I mean, I'd love Julian Brisebois, but obviously he's not leaving Tampa.
What about George McPhee? I heard that one with, but he's like president of hockey operations with Vegas.
He's got it. He's got it made.
Yeah, I mean, I thought.
I had heard, and this, I'm not reporting this as a rumor. I had just heard this as a sort of a side comment, like during the year, that if Kyle Dubas didn't come back as Leafs general manager, one guy who's always wanted to be general manager of the Maple Leafs has been Jim Rutherford. And he's president. He's president in Vancouver, and Patrick Alvin is sort of in control there. But Jim Rutherford is, I think, in his 70s. It would be like bringing back Lou Lamoriello again. So I don't think that that's realistic. I mean,
what about Ray Shero? That's another name that I heard.
Yeah, the thing is that you're talking about a lot of the rehash guys. I know that Shero was in the mix.
Shanahan said he wanted experience, right?
Right, exactly. But there's a borderline of experience and somebody who's just sort of, past it. And I don't know. Ray Shero supposedly was in the mix for the presidency in Philadelphia, but he wanted some control of hockey operations, and they were going with Daniel Briere, a neophyte, as the general manager. So that's why they went with Keith Jones, who probably won't have a lot of influence on hockey decisions. So I don't know if it's, Treliving, supposedly they've requested, or there's been a communication that they would give permission. I don't think his record in Calgary was particularly good, so I would shy away from that. The Doug Armstrong thing is intriguing, but he's got a contract. Now, whether this would be similar to what happened with Brian Burke 15 years ago, where he had a contract with Anaheim, but he told Anaheim, I'd like to go take this job. And he had just won a cup there, so they let him go. Would St. Louis let him out of their contract? I mean, I don't know if they have somebody waiting in the wings to take over for him because they did sign him to a contract, but his name has been mentioned in 2 or 3 different places. So, where there's smoke, there's fire. Let's just say this, and I have nothing against this guy as a person, nothing at all. I've met him a couple times. He seemed like a very nice guy. I just think Mark Hunter would be an unmitigated disaster. I think that, because then you're going back to the guy that you chose against 5 years ago and said, oh, we were wrong now. And I think he's in his early 60s, and he's never been a general manager in the league. So he doesn't exactly have the experience that Brendan Shanahan is looking for.
What about like some guys like I've heard of, I can't remember his name. So like there's a right-hand guy for Steve Yzerman in Detroit. Chris, I think, that I've heard. Yeah, that's right. Chris Draper. Right.
And he's buddies with Shanahan. But
so I heard that.
He doesn't have any, he's not a GM. No. I mean, he's been an AGM, but yeah.
And then what about the other another kind of wunderkind kind of name out there? Is that Eric Tulsky? So.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is that, again, why would Eric Tulsky take that job when, a older version of Eric Tulsky, somebody who was deemed like the wunderkind and Mr. Analytics, which I don't think Kyle Dubas was, but he was he'd want to do some of the same things that Dubas would want to do.
Yeah.
So I don't think that's a good fit. So,
and the last one actually I have is I don't think it's going to work either. But what about Stan Bowman? If he
thank you
with that.
Well,
you just rehab the culture of the Leafs somewhat. And you're going to turn it back like 180? No, thank you.
Well, see, the problem here is that if Sheldon Keefe is let go, which we all think is going to happen once a new GM is put in place, the leading candidate to be the coach could be Joel Quenneville.
Oh, And that I don't want that either.
Right. And so you could say, well, Stan Bowman and Joel Quenneville. Well, I saw for a fact where Stan Bowman and Joel Quenneville weren't getting along on the draft floor. And I think it was
I remember that too.
Yes. Where they had just traded Nicholas Yarmulson to Arizona. And that was one of Quenneville's favorite players. And Quenneville basically stormed off the draft floor. So,
all right. Yeah.
Stan Bowman, he won 3 Stanley Cups, but honestly, his role in the whole Kyle Beach situation,
MLS wouldn't. Yeah, I wouldn't think so either. They wouldn't.
But I do think there's a possibility, depending on who the coach or depending on who the general manager is, that they are going to want a big name coach to change sort of I use this expression that I used a lot back in the Matt Sundin days, that country club culture that I think exists. There's definitely some not lackadaisical, but I just think there's a comfort level here. And maybe that was provided by Kyle Dubas being a backer of these guys. And now that comfort level is gone, and you're going to have probably somebody with experience coming in. If Lou Lamoriello hadn't been hired before, I would say, Lou would be a perfect guy to come in. And, I don't know if they have.
It's like I read an article saying the inmates are controlling the asylum or whatever, right?
What about for coach wise? What about like somebody like Gerard Gallant?
Knowing Gallant and what happened in New York, he doesn't they had immediate success year one, but they played a style completely different than what the Leafs play. And when they tried to go more high skill, bringing in Tarasenko, bringing in Kane,
right,
they lost to New Jersey in 7 games. You have to find, first of all, you either have to change the composition of the team to play what we're seeing out of Carolina and Florida and Dallas and Vegas, which doesn't resemble what the Leafs played, very much. Or you have to have a coach who will pull the best out of a skilled group that the Leafs, somebody suggested Bruce Boudreau, and I know that would be a dream for him because he's always wanted to coach the Leafs, and the media loves him. But is he the right coach? And this team has had a tough time winning Game 7s. Let's get the guy who's like the opposite of Peter DeBoer. He's like 0-7. I love you, Bruce, but sorry. Yeah.
But Elias Pettersson arguably had his best season under him,
and Ovechkin too.
So there you go. I don't know. It's too bad Barry Trotz already got a job somewhere else because. If only he could have waited a little while longer, maybe he would have been a good fit.
Don Cherry's available.
Hey, he doesn't want to break up the core 4. He wants to run it back. So there you go.
Yeah, because he's a Bruins fan and he wants to see the Leafs lose over and over.
Yeah. Anyways, all right. Well, there's going to be a lot more. We're going to have you on again, definitely.
Oh yeah, it's not going to be boring, folks.
We were saying with still our patio season is going to be a pretty busy one when we have our summer patio season shows. So we'll definitely even before that in June, obviously.
I'll have a drink with an umbrella in my hand.
That's perfect. Yeah. That's perfect. Well, definitely the Leafs are the gift that keeps on giving.
Yeah.
And of course, we want to thank Mike once again for being our guest. So you can check out Mike's blog and podcast at hockeybuzz.com and the Leafs Convo. And if you don't follow him on Twitter, you should, and make sure you do. He's at Mike in Buffalo. That's his handle. So thanks again, Mike.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. All right. Thanks to Mike for coming on. And we'd love to get your feedback and thoughts on the show. So if you're watching this on YouTube, leave us a comment, or on Spotify. It's very easy. If you just click on the show description while you're listening to us, at the very bottom, there's a poll there. You just have to click what part of the show did you like? And we just want to get your feedback, and it helps us. It helps to grow our show and make it better for you too.
And again, we just want to give you a reminder that we will be reverting back to our normal publishing schedule twice monthly. So our next episode will be on June 7th. Unless something else big happens, you never know between now and then, and we'll do another bonus episode if that happens. So just hit the follow button wherever you listen to us, and that way you will not miss any of our shows.
Yeah. And also be sure to follow us on social media, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Our handle is at LTL1917, and that's also our YouTube handle. And a reminder to leave us a rating or a review, and let us know what you think of the show. It's easy on Apple and Spotify, and it's important for our show to get more exposure as a source for Leaf content. And we thank you for taking the time.
And another way to help us is by visiting our Ko-fi page at Ko-fi.com. You can follow us there. And if you choose to, you can support us by buying us a coffee. Any donation you make goes towards helping us produce the show and making it even better for you. So you can find the link to our Ko-fi page on our show notes or in any of our social media profile pages.
Yeah. And on our Ko-fi page, we got a lot of photos there from our days back at the gardens. So you can check those out and just throughout the regular seasons, check out our photo gallery there and can see some of the fun times that we've had. Our road trip to Carolina this season too. Mm-hmm. So we also want to thank our healthcare workers and first responders for everything that they do.
So just one more last thing I want to add before we sign off. We've seen many GMs come in claiming to be the Messiah and saying that they're going to take us to the promised land. But so far, none of them have turned out to be Jesus. So we'll see what happens. But in the meantime, thanks as always for listening and watching. And until next time, go Leafs, go.
Go.